There we go.
All right, good deal.
Cool. I am fixed up now. All right, cool. So, welcome to Business of Comics. I am Christopher Michael from Homebrewed Comics and Indie Comics Dispatch. And tonight we have Kevin, and I don't want to butcher your name. So Kevin from Inked Marketing, and we're going to allow him to discuss what he does for Indie Comics and the importance of marketing and strategy for Kickstarters. So Kevin, go ahead and kick it off.
Well, I appreciate that, and don't worry about the name. It's butchered a lot. The last name is pronounced Guillotte, so I usually always spell it when I call somebody. That way we get that out of the way. Very French, very mispronounced, so not a problem. I appreciate being on the show and to be able to talk about such a great topic, because this has been the year of indies, with so many other businesses and business plans taking a hard hit, especially the food industry and some other travel industries and stuff. Indies have been able to flourish. All the way from the way that they're distributed physically to the way that you're starting to see them being distributed on the net now. So that is a big gain for us as a whole. And what we like to explain to people is, when Inked was formed, it was formed for creators by creators. So we understand the business. We've been there. We've been through the process. We know all the aches and pains that you have to go through, and it's our job to try to remove some of those out of your way.
Awesome. Yeah, I know from personal experience, you have been quite a big help to my Indiegogo and helped me, plan that and get that thing launched. So how many different creators do you have that you work with right now?
Currently on the boards, there are 17 different projects coming up from now through May. And of those 17 projects span across 9 different countries and 5 different continents. So it's it's very much a global aspect, a global marketing system. And the podcast that we do along with everybody is that we're bringing you guys more into now is for the roadshow. So the podcast aspect is really globally as well now for the NSC Roadshow. And that's for you guys as creators to be able to get on and do just what we're doing now. Talk to different audiences that they may not been exposed to before.
And with the new way of indie, I guess, how everything's kind of gone virtual with, everybody's got a live show, and the virtual Comic Cons, things like that. How do you think that's affected your business and, indie comics in general, the ones you've worked with?
I think it's helped it greatly. We were actually, and I never do use the term first in anything, because there's always people doing things and nobody ever knows who is first to the gate with something. So we were one of the first, though, to launch a virtual con when everything hit. We watched cons start to go down when Emerald Con went down. We started really paying attention. And then when MegaCon went down, that was our chance to step in and put together CyberCon. And CyberCon saw last year 156,000 hits in 56 straight hours.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous numbers. And I think the only thing we did not get an impact was, I think, Antarctica maybe, but everybody else had some impact. That showed us what could happen. And then, of course, a lot of the other groups have gotten into it and everything. There's of course room for everybody, because the comic book industry, if nobody's ever really tapped into the number, is a $1.2 billion industry. That's an uptick. 2019 was 1.2. 2018, it was actually about 11% less. So it took an 11% gain from 18 to 19, and then it's still climbing from there.
Wow.
But the cons are going to be, I don't think the virtual cons are ever going to go away now, because there'll always be that virtual con imprint to a particular con. And we're going to have presence at all the different cons that are going to be out there, and we'll have representatives in the field. Hey, Natalie. And we're going to have representatives in the field, so you can be there. Hey, Jeremy, right there in the action with everybody else. So we'll have people in the field, and you will have that experience right from your home. So I think that will always become a part of, or an assistant to, or a tool that can be used along with regular cons. I think Dragon Con saw that, and MegaCon saw that, because they both stepped in and backed CyberCon, which was nice.
And how do you get creators to join these cons?
On the virtual cons, what we did was we went around and talked to all the different creators that were out there and said, hey, look, we're putting together this con. We're going to run it like a regular con. It's going to have an artist alley, writer's row. There's going to be a main ballroom. There's going to be all these different subsets. You can do panels, and basically just put it together on paper and presented it and said, hey, look, we're not for the con that we're doing the first out of the gate, we're not charging anything in the door because it's a virtual con. Come and sell your goods and just come gather up. And huge outpouring of people to do that, and everybody enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun because NSC Live TV and HWWS TV got together, and we teamed up to do that event. And it was a lot of passing the baton back and forth to keep the continuous feed going, to stay on that long. We would each kind of take naps in between to stay up that many hours in a row and pass it back and forth, or play a pre-recorded like Stan's last panel and those kind of things to kind of put out there. But there was cosplay events, there was contests, people were selling comics live, they were doing signings, you name it. It was just like being in a regular con.
I mean, that's really cool, because I know a lot of creators were worried about this virtual shift. And from my perspective, I mean, look at the Kickstarter numbers. They should speak for themselves. A lot of creators right now are actually doing really well. So on your perspective, I mean, I've seen your numbers, but every creator, I think you actually gave me some raw numbers, I want to say yesterday, because I talk to you almost every day.
Yeah.
You gave me raw numbers as far as how much Inked has raised for their clients. So what do those numbers look like?
And it's something that what was interesting was that number didn't even pop up because it wasn't something we were tracking until I put all of the campaigns up on the wall that's to the side of me, and to see where everything was going to fall out, because we have everything, a path of everything and how everything's supposed to drop. And I had the funding numbers across all the previous and then where we were at with the new ones. And I kind of looked at it for a second, just kind of added it up walking across it, and it was over $100,000 has been raised so far just in the clients that we've been able to help.
That's awesome.
It's great to be able to help people have their baby, right? Their dreams come alive. And that's the awesome thing. I mean, you just blew through the third goal, which is awesome. And we're, cranking it up. We've got 4 or 5 days left to try to hit that next fourth goal.
Yep. So, 5 days to get 14 backers, I think. We're at 46.
Yep. And that will be, and we always try to, what's nice is we have someone bring a campaign, and then they'll bring us another campaign, and then they'll bring us another campaign, and they'll say, you know what, just do them all. Just, here you go. Here's the lot. We've got some really interesting ones coming up. Blood and Bullets is coming out from Monty Michael Moore. That's going to be coming out April the 7th. And just before that is going to be another great one. It's going to be Justin Gray is bringing Billy the Kid to life, which is going to be a really cool. Both of those are different Western comics. Both of them have some really interesting twists and tales to them. And then we've had a lot of impact and done a lot of stuff with The Listener from Dustin Burnell. That's been an ongoing series. He's actually, as you know, written several books ahead. He's probably on book 30, I want to say 29 or 30. And we've just released book 2 and closed it out and had a successful Kickstarter. We're working on bringing up another book into that family, which is called Greed. And then we're going to start back in book 3 for Listener and keep going. And then another one that's come on board is called Anua. It's an all Hawaiian comic that's going to be released towards the tail end of April, all Hawaiian team, which is really cool. So we've got that island of all Hawaiian stuff going on. And then we've got Comex coming on board at the 1st of April with an all Australian team. And the all Australian team is 18 different creators doing an 18-month calendar. So that's featuring all the different works that they do. That's a really fun project as well. And then Darren Muncie's going to have The Rogue that's going to come out here shortly on the tail end of April as well. And then last but not least, Richard Boom is coming out with another another one-shot for The Mummy, which all of those books so far are really building up some followings, because the trick to this is getting ahead of it. You have to start momentum, because the clock starts when you hit. And that's what we explained the one we just released a couple days ago, which is Alpha Dogs. And we explained that concept of we're the ramp, right? So we're out there 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time at minimum, putting ads out for the book, booking you on podcasts. And you got a chance to experience all that, right? You got a chance you've been podcast all over the world now and brought your book to people. And that's what we love to see. And that's all brought through from the roadshow. So now as you're ramping up, you're talking to all these different podcasts, you're getting with all these different audiences, you're building your following. So when you hit the Kickstarter, you don't just hit cold and go straight up. You hit with an even ramp, and you have a swing.
Yeah. So going into that ramp, without giving too much away to everybody, because I see a lot of the creators in here have books that have either funded, they're going back to Kickstarter soon, or plan on one in the near future. So if you could give some advice to maybe a first-time Kickstarter, or even a tenured Kickstarter person, because you got to think some people have been to Kickstarter and funded, but maybe not gotten what they really wanted. Like, what would be some tips and tricks for people that are getting ready to go to Kickstarter or another platform?
I would say right off the bat, you have to know where you want to be to know how to get there. So you need to kind of have some end results in mind that you would like to achieve. And then from that, you kind of basically back up. You say, okay, I'm going to launch on whatever day, the 10th. And then you just back up from the 10th, you back up 3 weeks and make sure that with 3 weeks ahead of that you're getting the message out there through whatever media platforms you normally use. Once you're doing that, you're also trying to get with, if you are a campaign that's already happened, you've had a previous book, you try to reach back to your previous group that you sold to and let them know, hey, by the way, you liked the book last time, I've got either another version of the book or another title coming out. So you have to reach back into your existing audience, which we call your ideal market. And then you have to reach forward into markets you haven't been in. Yep. And make sure you're mixing it up. Make sure you're doing Twitter, Facebook, Twitch. Don't just put all your eggs in one basket. And that's what we like to show for people. We do a well-rounded display, because in the presentation, you've been on all these different things. So you're getting presence over in Twitch, you're getting presence in Facebook, things are popping up on other radio shows. So you're getting play on, these Apple podcasts that are going out there. You're on all these other different feeds other than just one thing. And you have to have a very well-rounded strategy to get the most impact.
So when you say Twitch, I don't see a lot of comic creators on Twitch. What kind of content does a comic creator put on Twitch? And that's a question for me myself, because I have a Twitch channel. I've done nothing with it because I don't know what to do with Twitch and comics.
It's more right now in its infancy, and it's more for selling comics online, but they do have a comic presence. So Twitch is, of course, is similar to Facebook in the fact that you can do a live feed, you can do posts. So what you need to do is you can pre-record or can certain messages about your book and start to drop them in that feed. Same thing you would do in YouTube. You would record 3 or 4 or 5 messages about your book, preload them, and then drop them in Facebook every so often, and then turn around and drop them in YouTube. YouTube is very powerful for this medium. It probably goes pretty much Facebook, YouTube, and then after that, they all kind of wrestle for number 3.
Gotcha. That's some good information, just because I know I've had a few people reach out and say, hey, I want to start a Twitch channel, but I don't know what to put on there. And I think maybe unboxing things. I've been trying to even think for myself, what do I want to put on there? And my book's based off D&D, so I was like, hey, let's make a video of us playing D&D while we're writing the book.
It's a great one.
Other creators, I'm sure everybody has a cool writing process, and not everybody writes by themselves. So even some of that creative background would be cool. Thinking about Twitch for me, just to other creators. Look at, I use The Mandalorian a lot, because the first season I went and watched all the behind the scenes stuff, and I really enjoyed the behind the scenes. It gave me even some kind of passion behind the project. And so, with Twitch, it's kind of cool to see that behind the scenes. And I've seen Patreon with some creators too, that behind the scenes kind of footage is kind of cool. So I think that's, I think I've talked to you about Patreon before as well. That's another avenue for creators. So
there's Patreon, there's Periscope is another one. But you're right, you hit the nail on the head, and basically took the words out of my mouth and saying the fact that people love to see the creative process, especially even more so right now, because we're disengaged from cons. We're disengaged from what we're normally used to. So we don't have that, or we can't go to the comic shop in some states because the doors are still shut. They only let 5 people in at a time, and all those kind of things. It's frustrating, right? So people to be able to sit in their living room or their office and be able to watch someone create is a powerful thing. We used a lot of that when we displayed everything for Local Hero. And if you follow anything that we've done in the past, Local Hero blew the numbers out of the water for most anything around it. That funding goal was set at about 2,500, and that was Monty Michael Moore's first book as a creator, right? He had done wonderful covers for 30 plus years. Has been in the business, great guy, a Renaissance man, if you will, because he does painting, sculpture, airbrush, inked, you name it, he can do it all, and does it well. So moving him into the creative realm, it actually came apart on a panel, and I got to talking to him about it. And to move him into that realm was going to be challenging because he held on to that idea for a couple of years, trying to find the best venue to release it. So long story short, we talked about it, and the book basically made history for him. It's basically opened up to where he's offering multiple IPs now, and doing a lot more in the creative realm in that role. But that book ended up a little over 50,000 by the time the dust settled. And by the time commissions finished out, it topped around, I want to say, about 56,000. So the role on that one, it hit 2016% funding, which is an incredible number. Backers were over 600. And then Justin's book, most recently, that's, I guess, been our own personal funding breaker, because we like to set goals and ambitious and try to break new records for the creators. Our funding goal record has been the 50,000, and then we just broke another backer roll, which was over 900. We almost hit 1,000 backers in Justin's campaign, which was for Spicy Pulp, and that set records for him as well. That was the most successful book. It funded in 24 hours. Was the most successful book he's had in the 5-run campaign of that series. So he was very happy to be able to bring us back another book, which is Billy the Kit. And then Monty's book again did so well. He came back to me with an art book and said, "Okay, what do you guys do with an art book?" That art book again set numbers and a pace for him and broke records, which was nice. And that opens the door and lets them do more things. And that's what the whole point of this is to be able to be there and let the creators create, do the things that, as you know, need to happen that you may not have time to do, right? Or maybe that's not your forte, right? Maybe your thing is creating, and this over here you hadn't heard before, known about before, but we stay aware of all the trends because the team is spread all over the world. I mean, we have people stretched everywhere, and I constantly, as you know, I get nicknamed the vampire sometimes because I may be on the phone or on the video with one of our teammates in Australia, which is ES, or with Richard Boom over there in the Netherlands. So I'm always jumping around from hour to hour, and then you and I were both hanging in there late last night for over in Australia for Comics to Movies. So that was a man. We were up for it though. We made it.
I woke up this morning at 7 thinking I had to be on that live at 8, not realizing the time difference. And because when I sent it to him last week, I was like, "Hey, I guess that's 8 o'clock my time, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, that sounds about right."
Yeah.
I woke up randomly at 7. My alarm was for 7:30. I look at my phone, and he's like, "I'll see you in an hour." And he sent me that at 6. I was like, "Hey, dude, I'll be on." I probably looked like I just rolled out of bed because I did. But no, I think that's really cool that you have not just like a local presence or just a U.S. presence, this worldwide presence for everyone, because comics isn't just a localized, fandom. At least that's not what people want. Right. So having that worldwide presence gives people, like I said, like Australia. I might know some people in Australia, but I think that the live I did today really did help the campaign. And I think for all creators, another piece of advice that you've given me is get on as many lives as possible. Get on as many shows, whether you're doing back-to-back. I mean, I've literally gone from one show to another in 30-minute increments while we're on this campaign, just to get the name out there. And I think another thing you showed me was, especially going with the back-to-back campaigns as well, like book to book, just getting the name out there on a live now doesn't mean you have a backer off this, one show you do, but the more you do and the more they see your name and the more they learn is the better. So I think, that was the first piece of advice I think you gave me, was just get on every show you can. And I wanted to also ask you, because this is another question we get from a lot of creators. When going to Kickstarter or choosing Indiegogo, which I know we've kind of been playing with Indiegogo with my campaign, which I think when I approached you, I told you the purpose of the campaign. It was kind of an experiment, and there was a low goal, and we knew what we were walking into with Indiegogo. But I do have some people ask me, why Indiegogo? Why not Kickstarter? What do you use them both for? What one's better? So since you have experience on both platforms, what kind of insights can you give to people on which one to choose when going to a crowdfunding?
Well, as you mentioned, they both have different markets, different audiences they cater to, right? So the back offices, from being in the back office in both, because we are really entwined in the back offices. It depends on whichever package you get with us, but one of the packages offers the fact that we actually get in and build your Kickstarter for you. In other words, we get pulled on as a collaborator, and then we actually lay everything out. I know Richard and I have spent several hours in people's campaigns up on the screen, on the big screen, which I have us now, and scrolling through and making sure everything is formulated right, making sure the tiers match, the spelling's right, it flows well, it's worded well, the pictures hit just right. So that's literally in the back office doing, turning a wrench. Kickstarter, and this is my experiences, some other creators I've talked to about it, Kickstarter's back office is a little more fluid, a little more easier to deal with than Indiegogo's. So I say that up there at front. I do like both for different reasons. Kickstarter right now basically has more of a presence in the market. So nothing against Indiegogo, but if you went ahead and split the dollar down the middle, I would say of that dollar, you would have 75% would be on the Kickstarter side and 25% would be on the Indiegogo side. So whatever you can make an Indiegogo, just times that times again, and you would come out that way in Kickstarter, just from the sheer presence of it all.
I like the Indiegogo layout, honestly. Going from Kickstarter to Indiegogo, I do navigate a little bit better on Indiegogo. Problem with Indiegogo that I have are a few things. One, there's not an app, so it does make it harder just to log in and check certain things. Right. The information, they both kind of display information in their own ways. I do like Indiegogo a little bit. The creation process is a little different, and
most definitely.
I feel like Indiegogo, like the issue I ran into was I put an image by accident on one of my tiers. I had to delete that tier and then recreate that tier to get rid of the image. I couldn't just replace the image. That was a little bit of a pain in the neck, and so I don't like that. There's a few small things, and it's not like a make or break for me, but right. It is cumbersome in comparison to Kickstarter. That being said, I have had more direct sales off of Indiegogo than I did off Kickstarter when I did Kickstarter.
And you're right, because like I said, when I say they have that presence, there's also a lot more fish in that sea. So when you step out there in Kickstarter, you are, and much like as Indiegogo, but Kickstarter is just ocean of things going on, and people are kickstarting watches and bikes and blenders and microwaves and cars,
everything.
And kickstarting everything under the sun, right? So you kind of step out into a bigger ocean than you do in Indiegogo, and that's part of, it's got pluses and minuses to it. So that's why I always tell people, really figure out, and like you did, because you did well with it, figure out what you want to pull out of it as a creator, and you had a specific purpose, and I think that goal was achieved. So you got to kind of have that in mind before you step out there. I've just had 2 back-to-back meetings with different groups before we came on, and explaining to them the process of all that, which is outlined in our solutions guide. And I always tell people to find out more about us and what we do, or how to even plan out what you want to do for your offering. Just grab one of our solutions guide, and that basically kind of outlines how we do things as far as the solution itself. And then we do a marketing analysis on your book, and then figure out the best places to put you as well, and formulate all that. But it's definitely, you have to definitely go out there with a game plan. If you don't go out there with a game plan and you just say, well, I'm going to throw it on Kickstarter and I'm going to make $1 million because I'm on Kickstarter, which I hear all the time. And funny enough, if you've never seen it, and I think we now talked about this, was that you have to go look at the South Park deal they did on Kickstarter. They did a little rip on Kickstarter, which yes, I don't follow them all the time. I was flipping, and I didn't even know they did it. I was flipping channels one day, and I heard them talk about Kickstarter. I said, well, wait a minute. I backed up and I said, what was that? And I watched and was almost in tears for how they build their whole, and I don't want to give it away, but how they build their whole Kickstarter empire, and how they all go at each other. And it's just funny. It's just, they did a very good job with it. I'm sure Kickstarter wanted to sue them after that thing came out, but it was all in good fun.
I've seen, as long as, how do I put this? So with a lot of the Kickstarters that I've seen and I've helped out and given, support for, the key thing that I always tell people is you have to understand the value of the product you've got. So I see some people completely undervalue their product, and I see others completely overvalue their product. And I think that looking into, when I did my first Kickstarter, I was the guy, like you just said, that threw it on Kickstarter and thought it would just make money. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't at a loss for most of it because I had a little bit of self-funding in there, a few friends that helped out, but I had no clue what I was walking into. And that's kind of my MO though. I usually just jump into something without knowing what it is, screw it up, come back and go, okay, how do I do it right?
Well, that's how you learn, right? That's a process in and of itself. So there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's sometimes it's painful and sometimes it's not. But
it's a little kick in the nuts when you feel like you've got something cool. And I did all the market. I actually did do research on Kickstarter, but I researched from Kickstarter, and they said, look at like products and what their goals are and how much does it cost to do this, and always add more because of this. And so I went up to, I had a goal of $1,500, which I didn't need. I think I really only needed about $400 or $500, but because of all I got in my own head on it, and I said, okay, I need 1,500, and I think we made just over 500 on the thing. So if I had done the goal right, I would have been fine.
There you go. People tend to overshoot that number, like you said. They especially when you're first getting into the game and you don't know as well. Even take a step back and look at some of the people that have been in this for years, or some of the major players, even the ones that make $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. You go back and look at their funding goal, and it might be 5 or 10. It's not going to be $100,000, even though they know they're going to make it and blow that out of the water. They keep it at a regular pace, and a safe pace, I should say, because there's nothing worse than setting out a $5,000 goal and coming in at $4,999. That's just, that's horrible.
That's when you go and you back it for $1.
Exactly. It's just, so you have to kind of keep a realistic number in mind, because we funded a book called The Voyage. And this was a young man that graduated from the Joe Kubrick School, because there is, of course, a comic school that you go to and learn the trade, which is awesome. So the Kubrick family has that school, and I think they've sold it now, if I believe right. But it's still operating on that kind of Kubrick way to do things, and who did, of course, Sergeant Rock and everything. But he went to that school and then graduated right when COVID hit. So what an awesome time to be in a new business, right? So he got dropped in that, and it talks about his story in the Solutions Guide, and he was a referral. And we normally get 65 to 75% of our business from referrals, and that's the way we love it, because that means we're doing good work for good people. And by doing that, he came to us, but the problem with his was he came to us a few days after he had started, and that one was a real push the rock up the hill battle, because we had no ramp, and his funding goal was 5,000, which was huge for somebody just stepping into the arena. And then his book price was low, but he had an awesome product, right? So you're like, okay, he's referred to us. We don't normally take them on after they've started, but we want to help him because he's a new creator and getting in the business, and ended up falling out at I want to say 5,500 when the dust settled.
That's awesome. I think I remember you talking to me about that one.
Yeah, that was a man. That was to the fight to the bitter end, and we were just days out. And him and I talked multiple times during the day, because that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on when we get with creators. And as you know, like you said, we talk all the time. We treat all the clients like family. We get to know each other. We get to know what our hobbies are, what our other families doing, kids and stuff, and pets and everything else. Because I think it's the coolest thing that you have, kind of played off the cat with your pet, which is going to be, we do some stuff later with Voodoo Lounge, but that's going to be awesome. But yeah, just getting out there and getting your name out there in as many places as you can. One of the things I talked to Dustin Burnell about was, oh, there you go, Life After the Kickstarter.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good one. Life After the Kickstarter is really pretty much, you're gearing up towards your fulfillment at that point, right?
Mhm.
So you have that downtime. And what we tell people is, if you want to do the back-to-backs, when you get through with the Kickstarter, then you can step into an Indiegogo and fund 1,000, 1,500, and that will help you cover some other shipping costs. It'll also help you with some printing costs. Do a flex goal in Indiegogo, right? Just get out there and get a little piece of the pie and help kind of keep your name out there and everything after. And also, too, if you have another project coming behind it, you want to, when that Gemini goes out, you want to make sure you have some sort of information to that customer that just bought from you that, hey, by the way, you bought this book, but hey, I got this new great thing coming right after this cool, great thing you just bought. You
Yep.
always want to, as that famous movie goes, you always want to be closing, right? You always want, because with so many projects out there, that's a great question, Dan. With so many projects out there, you don't want to lose their focus, right? You don't want to lose their attention. So anything like that. And then also, too, get on podcast after the fact and talk about what a great campaign you had, what else you have coming up. It's always having that presence and always having that connection with the client out there that's going to make or break you in the long run.
And I think, too, to add on to that, we've got platforms. Since your book gets funded, now you can make it, you can pay for it. You do have Amazon, which Comixology is good for digital.
Exactly.
There's, Indie Planet, which some people do have some success on. There's a lot of different platforms that you can put your book on post Kickstarter. You can also do your own website, which if you use Wix.com, Wix is really easy to set up your own. I've done it. They have your own place to create a store for you to ship from. Go create an account on USPS.com or FedEx.com, and there you go. It's pretty simple.
Your house.
Yep, you can ship right from your house, or you can get stamps.com. That's another way to do it. I actually do think Indie Comics Dispatch did a show recently on how to fulfill your books. Another thing is you can reach out to fulfillment companies. I know some of the printers will also offer fulfillment deals as well, and I believe Concrete Comics does have that through their printer, where they just do drop ship directly from the printer. They no longer have to pay an absorbent amount of cost for a large amount of books. The printer just drop ships them for them, which is kind of cool. So
it is. I get asked 4 or 5 times a week if we do fulfillment. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things we're exploring, and I won't jump into anything unless I've researched it fully and know it's the best route for the client. But what seems to happen in the fulfillment realm is exactly that. Fulfillment seems to be what they call a marketing the loss leader. It's the add-on or the extra of what a printing company will kick in for them printing your book. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, hey, look, we've got it printed. It's in our warehouse. We can ship it from here. Not a problem. That's kind of how that tends to work. And I've been in that printing realm for many, many years. And I can see how that could be a huge plus. Also, too, you have to think of, especially when you're doing in a global aspect, you make sure that you have some sort of digital availability, mm-hmm. because the other markets that you're talking to out there, to ship a $25 book to Australia will cost you about $35. So you have to make sure that if you want to catch some of that market outside of the US and vice versa, the clients that we have in Australia, we're saying, hey, look, think about maybe printing some of the stock in the US and fulfill from the US, so the client themselves don't have to pay that absorbent amount of shipping cost. Yep. So you have to really think about the entire, from pillar to post, from the time you create it to the time you want it output in the customer's hands, to make sure that everything's smooth for the end user, the customer themselves.
I've been thinking about trying to reach out to other countries printing, mm-hmm. and do kind of the opposite, because it's very expensive for me, because I do have a lot of overseas backers, and I looked at the cost. I actually ate so much cost on my first Kickstarter because I didn't know where everybody was going to come from.
Right.
So I kind of put, I did a blanket idea, and I wound up losing about $12 a book on those internationals. Look, I only had about 6 or 7, so it wasn't like a ton. At the same time, when I think every Kickstarter, every time you do a project, there's always going to be a lesson learned, and that was my lesson learned. Was okay, I do need to increase the cost a little bit, but what do I do for those international, customers, because they're willing to pay an extra, $22 to ship your book over a book overseas. What are you going to give them in return? So I'm personally working on some like thank you packages for the overseas customers.
Sure.
Or if I know there's a group of guys in the same area, like I know I have 3 customers that are related in Australia. I just message them and say, hey, if I combine all your shipping into one big box, you actually can get it faster than this. And they were totally cool with that. So I'm thinking, at some point, if I can get a printer down there, I can just have the printer fulfill that. The only drawback to that is, like, fulfillment side, is a lot of creators like to have the signed books. And
Right.
so that's something to think about when you're going into your campaign. If you're going to have a fulfillment on this, you need to at least talk to the printer prior to, because the printer, what they'll do before they print your books, they'll print all the covers and ship you how many that need to be signed.
Yep.
You'll ship them back, and then they'll put the books together for you. So that's another thing to keep in mind for when you're fulfilling. And back onto the question itself, post Kickstarter, post crowdfunding, trying to get your book to other people. Lives still work. Treat them as your own personal Comic-Con. Yes. If you do a weekly live, I think even post my last Kickstarter, I would do one every week, and I continually sold books. I'm still selling books, even though I have an Indiegogo. I just got an order off my website 2 days ago for issues 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to the customer. I said, hey, I can refund you because you can use that same money, go onto the website, and get 4 books.
Yep.
And so they wound up actually doing that. But your website, if you use, I think we've touched on Facebook, we've touched on, like, your social media sites are very important post Kickstarter and leading up to your Kickstarter. I think in the near future, you're going to see more and more stores welcoming the idea of indie comics or small press publishers to their stores, because they're on the fulfillment side. That's actually something I work in. I work in fulfillment. I work in distribution. Mm. And from our side, I do more board games, and I have a lot of Kickstarter clients. And you have to understand, fulfillment does not mean sales. Fulfillment means you still have the work to do post Kickstarter. So if you can get a fulfillment deal through a printer, through someone else, it just means you still got to get out there for people to buy your book, for them to fulfill those orders.
And the surveys are important. Make sure that you stress the urgency and the need to make sure on the Kickstarter side that they fill out the survey. That way they get their book and everything's nice and everything's accounted for. That's a thing that some people don't tend to put enough effort and I say stress onto when they sell their book. And then they'll say, hey, look, I've got 5 people out of 55 that didn't fill out a survey, so I have no way to get them their book.
And advertise in your own book too. I'm going to start with every book having the cover for the next book at the end of my book, and saying, hey, issue 4, issue 5 coming to crowdfunding, whatever it is, or even available on my website on such and such date. That way, when you're out of the Kickstarter, you're out of that realm. The customer reads it and goes, oh, okay, I just got my book and now I'm ready for the next one.
Yep.
Let me just, and I'm also, I think on book 4, and even actually at the end of book 3, I think this week, I'm going to put together my countdown page for my next book. So people can go ahead and sign up right after they finish that book, go right onto your Kickstarter, go right onto your Indiegogo, and hit the watch button. Yep. You can set those things up months in advance, and then people are already waiting for that to hit. And that also saves you if you're doing yours 6 months apart or a year apart, if you lost contact with that person, they're still going to get notification on launch. So I think that's an important thing too. Plan one book ahead. We talked earlier. You have a client that wrote 30 books.
Yeah. You always have to be closing. You always have to think a few books ahead to know that path. And that's why I stretch and always stress about the fact, hey, Greg, I always talk about the need to know where you want to be. And that's going to help you just in general lay out how to get there. Mm-hmm. And then we, of course, fill in the blanks to that I know everybody likes to use the term brick and mortar for comic shops and whatnot. So that same kind of term, you could basically kind of compare it to what we do and say that, okay, if all that you're doing is the bricks, we're the mortar in between that holds it all together and gets it from one side to the other.
Speaking of brick and mortar, that's something that everybody wants to break into.
Exactly.
It's tough because I discussed that this morning. A comic book store that doesn't know you personally doesn't care about your book. And so how do you make them care about your book? And I think you said earlier too, a lot of creators, they, when it comes to like their Kickstarters and stuff, they want to create. So is that a service that you would offer to like go post Kickstarter to kind of get, more recognition or out to stores?
That is one of the services that we're working on. And that service is going to be, if you go to the NSC Live TV site, if you click on the shopping cart right now, it brings you to stores that actually sell online live. And the second button to that within that one is to bring you to the top 50 stores in the nation. So there's 2,100 active comic book shops in the U.S. currently. We have a database that has all that information. We culled that and from 2 different surveys, put together the top 50 stores across the U.S. So there's the free gold nugget of advice right there. If you want to get with the biggest moving stores pushing the most paper, go to nsclivetv.com, click on the shopping cart when it says top 50 stores or top stores, click that button, and there's your imprint right there of the stores to talk to. We're layering that with contact information as the next round of update on the site. So you'll be able to contact the store, tell them who you are, explain to them what you want to do. Send them a couple samples of the book, right? Let them see what they're getting into. If there's stores within 100 miles of you, any direction, go over there, meet them.
I think I talked about that this morning too on our other show. Was your local store wants to stock your book. You might not realize it right now, but that local store knows that you're going to tell your friends, you're going to tell your family, my book is in a store.
Exactly.
And what's that going to do? They're going to go to the store. And most of the time, a person walks in the store, they don't just go in to buy one book. They go in, they go, oh, there's a new Batman or there's a new Spider-Man.
Exactly.
You're like a gateway drug at that point. So, and then what I talk to a lot of people about on my end is keep those numbers. Okay, so you drop off 30 books at a store today, and then you make a few posts on your social media, and that store calls you tomorrow and says, hey, I need more. That's when you start keeping an inventory sheet and you have a sign off, I dropped these off. Because then you can take that same information to another store and say, hey, I was really successful. In that store, you have that info, you have those hard numbers, and that's what businesses want to see. I know the title of the show is Business of Comics, and at the end of the day, you can only go so far with Kickstarter. You can only go so far with Indiegogo. Yeah. I mean, hitting foot the pavement and getting in there and showing them that you can move a product means more than anything to these stores.
And that's one of the things that we talk to a lot of people about, and that's why we're going the route of getting this relationship with all the stores, because we've just moved to, my wife and I just moved to Washington State here roughly about a year ago. So before that, I was fortunate enough to have my local comic shop be Mile High Comics for 2 years. So I was in Mile High Comics religiously every 2 weeks for 2 years straight.
I love that store. I've been there twice. That's amazing.
It is just, if you ever want to see, if anybody out there wants to see a really good impact of that store, if you heard about it, Google Kevin Smith's visit to Mile High or Kevin Smith's tour to Mile High. I think it pops up either way. And he goes on a pretty exclusive and nice behind the scenes tour that Chuck leads him around on. Chuck's the owner of Mile High. Chuck's a great guy, very much involved with the community. The first time I met Chuck, he was actually walking in the door from bringing canned goods and doing some stuff at the soup kitchen. So every time I see him, he's always coming or going from an event like that. And Kevin Smith coined the term comic book Jesus because of all the stuff that Chuck was doing. And I really got to know him and the crew. And it was like Cheers, right? You go in and everybody knows your name because they see you all the time. I was bringing in books. I was selling books, buying books for other customers, buying books for other live shows, because we track books and do stuff for the Top Dog side of the house. And they like to support local businesses. There's cases of books of people that have a very big indie presence within Mile High. As you know, the whole story, Image was real close to Mile High back in the day, and there was a lot of signings from Image at Mile High. So they've always been big indie supporters. So if you just talk to your local comic shop, explain to them what you're about. When I say local, your radius is a good 100, 200 miles around you. Find out how many shops are in that zone, and shows and whatnot where you can go set up and do signings, which shows are actually starting to come back slowly, but they're there. And the comic shops love having people in there to sign because that, of course, brings people in the door, right?
Yep.
It's a win-win for everybody involved in it. And then if you establish that presence with them, say, hey, what is the next book you have out? What is the next thing that you're doing? What is the, what else do you have coming? And you now have that friend for life in that industry. That's your direct feed to the customer. If you're not mailing them something, you're going through the store to send it to them. And you can do that in other countries too. I know that Dustin's done really well, Brunel, with the listener, because he has a really good client base that's been developed that he's been culling through over in London. So that's his style of book, does really well there. There's a store owner that really enjoys the book and orders stuff from the book all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's, you got to kind of find out, and that's what we help do as well. Find out what's accepting the most of your comic, or where your industry kind of style leads you to be accepted at, and then just find a way to keep drilling down through to get to the most paper moved.
And that's a thing that I've experienced on the creative side. A lot of people are afraid to get out there. A lot of people are really afraid to go and present themselves. And I think that comes from that we all have a slight fear of rejection. I say all, I don't think my kid does, because she goes up to anybody and says hello. But
I kind of have that curse too.
There's a good amount of people that are just afraid of that initial, hey, I made this, can I present it? And you have to remember, you setting up a table for free in a comic book store, no matter what, is going to draw attention. Okay, right. You're going to promote it. Then on top of it, customers are going to walk in the door, and you setting up in a store, they're going to think you're important. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you're not the Girl Scout cookies. You're a dude sitting at a table with books on it. What is that book? That dude must be important.
But if they buy 10 books, you might want to throw in a box of cookies just to,
I mean, I am going to tell you that if I were to buy a thing of comics from somebody and they gave me a free box of Thin Mints, I'm definitely going back to them. So, good marketing ploy right there. But think about it. If you were to walk into a store, and I always try to do this, like, think how I think. And if I walk into a store and I see a guy sitting at a table, I'm going to go, I want to check that out.
Yeah, who is this guy? Who is this?
Yeah. I mean, Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane sit at tables. So who is this guy sitting at a table? So I would want to go up and check it out. And then that allows you to create those relationships and show them you are somebody cool. You got a cool product. And that's a post-Kickstarter thing, because you have nothing to lose at that point except your own time, because your book's printed.
Exactly. The great thing about that too is it doesn't take a lot of killing out of the pocketbook to set up for a table. If you bring your own table, you're talking $50-$60 from a fold-out table to bring with you. And I would buy a couple of those kind of political yard sign signs that you just stick in the ground and put live signing today. You stick a couple of those bright green or orange in the out in the grass. People are the comic book people of the world that's drive by that are gonna see that and go, wait a minute, who's there? What's going on? Yep. Who is that guy? Who is that masked man?
Yeah. I mean, you go to concerts. If you go to if you used to go to Warped Tour, things like that, you'd see bands you never saw, and you'd walk by their merch table and go, oh, I kind of want to check them out. People want to check you out. You just have to be in front of them. And on top of it, if you're real smart, what you'll do is you'll get 10 of your friends to come hang out at the store all day, given it's COVID. So, be respectful of the space. But if it's a good sized store, say, hey, I'm going to bring a couple people just to hang around the table, make it look like there's people there. If you make it, that's a big thing people forget. How you make people perceive you is what they're going to think. So if they see 3 or 4 people hanging around your table, who is that guy? I want to know. What book is he selling? I'm in a comic book.
I always tell people, make sure you aim for the fence in whatever you do, right? You're not going to know until you try, right? So, and that's just the way you're right. That's the way you have to present it to fulfill it, because passion is the key to all of this, right? And we're passionate about the projects that are brought to us, because that's what helps fuel the project, right? And that's what helps fuel the success in all of this for what we do for people, because we're passionate about it. Well, what I tell people, make sure that you're passionate about your own book. Don't get on either at a table selling, signing in front of somebody or shaking hands, or if you are on a live, or if you're on, say, the beginning of your Kickstarter and you're doing the video for it, don't be just, grab a book. Hey, this is my book. I did this book because I really want to do a comic, and I thought I could do a comic, and here's my comic. And no, man. Hey, man, this is this comic that I put together. I've been putting it together for the last 2 years. We got a bunch of great artists in it. We're going to have a great offering. We got posters and stickers and bookmarks and stuff that flashes and explodes. And I mean, you just have to bring it, right? You can't just kind of just go, yeah, this is me and this is my thing. And that's tough for some people. That really is tough for them, like you said, to get out there, because you're exposed at that point, right? You're the turtle that's been flipped over, and now you're on your belly. You're like, okay, don't hurt me. This is my nice, pretty, cool thing. Please don't throw a rock at it, and don't make me feel bad about myself. That's you got to kind of build up a skin for that, because it just takes the one good yes in the right place at the right time to make all the difference.
I want to touch base on that tough skin thing for a moment. Everybody wants, and going back to your brick and mortar, discussion, everybody wants to be in a comic book store. Not everybody understands that you can't sell. I mean, you can, but you can't sell a comic book store, most of them, your book for $6, because they want to buy your book for $6. That makes them having to sell your book for $12.
They want to buy it for $3.
Right. So if they need and this is a term people need, if you're looking to grow outside of the Kickstarter realm, profit and loss, part of it is you have to understand your book is going to sell to a comic book store for $2.50 to $3 on average, because they're going to turn around and sell it for $5 to $6. They need a 50% markup because they are brick and mortar. They have employees, they have rent, they have all these things that you have to take in consideration. So what does that mean for you? Well, hey, this is something that I've been heavily diving into, is having a retail product and having a Kickstarter product. Okay. Your Kickstarter backers get high quality paper. They get the high gloss, cover. They get the thank you page. They get all the extra pages. When you go to a comic book store and you buy a book on a comic book shelf, it's stripped down. You don't have the thank you page and all these other things. You have the bare bones. So you get most printers will do a newspaper print. You do a little bit thinner paper, you do a thinner cover, and you take out your thank you, because your Kickstarter people got their thank you page. They got that extra content that they helped create. Now you have a thinner book, you have a little bit more, a lower price point for yourself. So selling it at $2.50, $3, you're still making a good dollar off of it. And and at that point, you're not going for the 50% markup that you get on Kickstarter. You're getting the volume, and then with the volume, you get the books in hands. So
plus, you're getting your name out there, and if you're still leaving the thing in there, hey, we got another book coming after this, you still have that still drawing for you. And there's nothing cooler, right, than walking in there and seeing your own book sitting on the shelf. Chuck Panu did that the other day. He took a picture of himself in a comic book from his viewpoint, with looking at his comic with the comic book shop in the background. Coolest shot, right, that you can have. And that was a real feel good, And we're talking about Chuck's next book and when it's going to come out and everything. So we're always talking with creators about the next new big thing. And some of the creators that are far enough in their process, we can talk 6 months down the road. Even in the business plan for everything that we're doing with ink marketing, I'm 5 years down the road. I have a path that I'm along, and it all started with NSC Live TV, right? That's what launched. And then out of that, pulled out of it the firm, which is Inked Marketing. So each one has a spot. And now out of Inked Marketing has pulled the Roadshow. And the Roadshow is what funds and does everything for you guys, right? That you're getting on doing all these things. So we've already plotted out where we wanted to be 5 years from now. And that's the path we're taking. And that's why I always suggest, please make sure you do that with your IP, right? Your property. Make sure that hey, look, I've got, I want to do 5 books, 10 books, 100 books, whatever you want to do. And then okay, well, by this time we want to be making this many books. Dustin Brown and I have a lot of conversations about that, because now he's in the stage where he can offer that second series out there. And hey, Dustin, and Dustin is also Dustin and I also co-host together Comic Roddery.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to the Comic-Con aspect of it, Comic Roddery was born because of that lack of camaraderie that we have, that we yearn for. So I took the word comic and camaraderie and slammed the two together and came up with Comic Roddery, and then kind of threw on the atomic aspect, so it's Atomic Comic Roddery. And it's a show that we do every week, and you know, you've been on it, and we bring other people and other creators on it, and just sit here and talk like we're talking. Talk about comics, talk about what their offering is, talk about what their plans are, talk about maybe some of the books they've picked up recently.
People love to hear you talk, and that's a thing I think people forget too. YouTube and Instagram Live. If you look at the developments that have happened on Instagram Live, it's because of the situation of COVID. Everyone's watching their phones.
Yeah.
You know, TV can't even keep up because TV went out of production. So they're like myself. I've never been a fan of YouTube shows. I just started subscribing to some shows that had some good information, and most of them are dudes sitting at a desk talking to the screen. So people, you know, it might not be 1,000 people. It might be 50 people that want to listen to you, but that's 50 more than you had before. And so I'm with you. I think getting on those shows, I've been on your show. It was, you know, it was a good time. I love the fun aspects of all those shows that you guys have, because it, like you said, it's like being with family, you know, and having that comfort level, having those discussions, and just watching dudes be dudes, or, you know, anybody be anybody. You get to see the raw person. You get to, you know, understand them. You get a connection there, and that connection drives them to be interested in what you're doing, you know. And you know, all your shows have been beneficial to me, especially even at 7 o'clock in the morning. But what you guys do is really good, which is why I wanted to bring you on this show, because I think that you have a little insight further than what most people, even the guys that have had successful Kickstarters, do. Because
I appreciate that.
You're doing the work on the background. You know, you're the bassist in the band. You know,
we've talked about how that works out. Yeah, we're the one helping carry the beat, but yet we're not the Coverdales, right? We're not the ones on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, right? With the guitar and the mic, right? We're kind of hanging back, right? We're the Neil Pearts of the group.
But that's people forget that that's actually the most important part, because you can have a really cool book, you know, you can love your story, but what needs to happen is getting other people to like your story. And with the rise of all these indie creators in the past year, I think that that's something that they didn't expect, you know, like, because you don't go from table to computer to, you know, into someone's hand and without having that middle piece of promotion and, you know, the marketing aspect. I think there's a lot of, and creatives generally, like the left brain creative people, like my wife, I love her to death, don't have as much of that right brain critical thinking business, got to get this done. And so you know, purpose of my show is to really get some of that critical thinking, that business mindset, and that information out to people, because it's not hard. It's just a matter of getting out there and doing it. I think the hardest part is, you know, putting foot to pavement.
We've developed a formula to it, and the formula is tried and true, and the formula is proven itself. Hey, Tony, has again, it's just withstood the test of time. I'm fortunate in the fact that I've been in this business since I was 16. Okay, so I'm telling off my age here. I've been at this for 32 years. So I didn't just kind of step out there and say, okay, here I am, let's go do this. There's been a lot of building in that process, and it started all the way back when I was doing marketing for huge companies, multi-million-dollar companies. When I was probably 22 years old, when people were still rocking the pager, you know. I was working at a telecom company, and we were on the cusp before PCS was even a thing, right? So it was still the bag phone, and I thought I was, you know, the cat's meow, as they say, because I had an installed bag phone in my car, which was hands-free, right? I'm driving around in a T-top Camaro, a brand new T-top Camaro at 22 years old with a completely hands-free phone. I was it, man. That was as high as you could get in my mind in the business.
Were you able to fit a passenger in the car? Because I remember those things.
Oh, they were. Yeah, you kind of had to kind of throw your leg over it. No, but it was. We had some posters up in the store which were hilarious because it said this was my grandfather. He was in the war, and it's the big backpack that the Army guys would wear, right? The big, huge thing that they had to communicate with the phone, and that was kind of a play with playing off the bag phones. But yeah, they were a brick, man. I mean, you could defend yourself with it. I mean, it was like a suitcase.
I actually had one. I got a cell phone from my generation. It was a very young age. I was the first kid in my town with a cell phone. My nickname was Cell Phone Guy when I was 12 years old. I had a job. My mom still needed responsibility, so she made me get a cell phone. And I had a Nokia that I broke, amazingly enough. And I went to the Radio Shack and I said, hey, and this, again, dating myself here, Radio Shack, and I said, hey, I broke this thing. I don't want my mom to know. And the guy comes out with his bag phone and is like, I can give you this for free. The bag phone went in my backpack.
Yes.
So I could ride my bike and have a phone with me.
Like a satellite phone, man.
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
We, and we joke about these things, but being in that arena at such a young age, and I soaked up like a sponge from all these major advertisers and advertising minds how to do these big budget marketing aspects. And then I'm talking multi-million-dollar campaigns. I had an $11 million marketing budget at 22 years old in the 90s, which is 4 times that now, of course, right? But that was huge. That was in my suit and tie days. I'm just in a pullover, long sleeve pullover right now, but for many years I was in the whole I had the tie up here and the nice rim glasses and the whole nine thing. But and I had to, of course, I was an art major, right? I had the whole I had to cut the ponytail off and go get a job and all those things, so that artist aspect went away. And the gray is real. That's earned. So, but it was several multi-million-dollar nationwide campaigns that I was thrust into, and here, make this work. I mean, we did the first prepaid phone in the nation, which was called Chatback. So I've been on several first of the kind projects through most of my career, and we designed the first mobile showroom of its kind for Sprint PCS. So in other words, I flew to Dallas, found a cutaway van, like a UPS style cutaway van, and then I was the one designing all the stores. So I basically Barbie-sized the store into the cutaway van, right? I had full computer functionality. I had an umbilical that could plug in at trade shows. It made all kind of news and was a huge thing. And to the fact to where they multiplied and basically built them as a line of vehicles, because they would actually, if a store was not open in time, you could literally drive the cutaway van to the store and sell phones out of the van as if the store was there. Because people don't realize what all goes into the launching of a store, much like the launching of a book. All of these points in space are all coming down and all have to diverge and hit at one finite point. So all these things that you're planning all have to land on this one date, right? Your launch date. It's the same thing with the store aspect. And that's how I learned how to plan all of these things in a way that all converge, or even if you're recording something in advance, where to place that to hit at the right time. Because you got to think, for a store, you're buying TV, radio, billboards, banners. You're doing all these same kind of things that we're doing electronically for the Kickstarter, but physically for a store opening.
Yeah.
So, and it was that in banks and casinos. I mean, I jokingly say I got a lot of influence from a lot of Atlantic City kind of guys on how to do the best marketing. It was again, of a lot of early upbringing of that. I'm talking slick back hair, Armani suits, pinky ring, and if you notice when you talk to these people that have been in this and that are very powerful, and I was always in the company of millionaires at this point, which was nice. I wasn't one of them, but I was with them at least. And you learn to slow your speech and command the room and walk up and shake the hand and grab the back of the arm and take over that handshake. And you learn all these things. And I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm a punk kid, right? And it was a great experience. And that experience and all those years of being in that arena is what helps Inc. now, and what helps those clients for Inc. is to be able to say, okay, I'm taking this big budget, multi-million-dollar kind of aspect on how to do things, and we're going to bring it to your campaign that's $2,000. We're going to show you how to do that.
I've had in my career, I've had a pleasure of meeting some very wealthy individuals, and I know wealth is a point of contention sometimes. But if you meet the right people that do have money and learn how they carry themselves, I think that helps you when you do go into the business world, because no matter who you are, you expect something from a business professional. And if you're making a comic book and you're putting it on Kickstarter and you're asking people for $1,000, $1,500, $5,000, they're looking at you like, what professional product are you giving back to me for my investment?
Right.
So having that, I'm in a shirt, I'm in a backwards hat, I have piercings in my ears and I have tattoos up and down my arms. I was a musician for a long time, but I was like you. I cut the hair, as you can see on the guitars on the wall. I say this a lot, I spent 6 years on Sony, and then I cut the hair. I, got the long sleeve shirts, I got the tie, and I was, in the business world. My boss was the guy that had the heated floors when you walked into his house. So you had to take his shoes off, but I never want to be the millionaire, but learning how they carry themselves, how they speak, and how proud they are of their own stuff, even if nobody wants it. I think there's something to be learned from those people, and we can take that. And I think another piece that people forget: the minute you start selling your product, you're a business person. You might not be an LLC. That's on your own deal for how you handle your taxes. Right. You're collecting money from other people. You're now a business.
Yes. So, and you have to carry yourself as such. That is a great point, Chris, because you have to command that kind of presence in a professional style manner. You can still be the artist, you can still be the creator, you can still all be those things, but do it in a manner that is business-like, because you are offering, as you said, a product, and don't think for a minute you're not selling yourself as much as you're selling your product. Yep. When you're doing that on these lives and on all these shows and meeting all these people. You are your product is you. That is not a separate thing. I get that all the time with Inked, and I tell people that, that's how I operate. That's how I was taught to operate when I was coming up through the ranks. Just to give you a quick story, one of the casinos that I worked with was owned by Merv Griffin. So I was, and for those of you who don't know Merv Griffin, that's back game show back in the days, okay? And
I know Merv Griffin.
Was the first shows that were out there, yeah. So that's like we had to explain on Comic Rider the other day what a Blockbuster card was. So I said, okay, a Blockbuster card, kids, is what your parents used to break in your room. So that's what they're breaking in with, is the Blockbuster card. So that's what that's used for these days.
I have one somewhere still.
I've got mine. I've got to find it because we're still unpacking. With that, I appreciate that, Dustin, because that's, it's great to, and Dustin and I have become really good friends, and Chris, you and I have become really good friends, and because that's how we want to be treated. That's how I want to be treated. I also want to, we look out for your best interest, right? If I'm out there doing stuff for you or for Crit, which is one, I'm making sure that we're placing you in the best arenas to get you the most impact. And that's where I think that from being in that arena at such a young age has helped with, because one of the stories I want to share real quick is I ghostwrote for Merv for 2 years. So I had his photograph and his signature, and I was writing his column in the newsletter for the casino. And then his entertainment person was a lady by the name of Hope Murray. And I walk in Hope's office, and Hope's office is this, probably about the size of most college apartments at this time. And she's sitting at the far end of the office, and she's got this wall of photographs. And she was on the phone one day, I remember, and I happened to just kind of glance over at the wall of photographs. And I'm just looking at all the photographs, and I'm looking at all these famous people that she's with. And they're not the kind of, hey, this is me in the airport with this person kind of photo, or this is, hey, me, this is the paid for shot I got at a Comic-Con. No, this is them eating breakfast and hanging out together. Or these are not casual, these are casual shots, I should say. These aren't like, those kind of capture moments. One of the shots that really got me was she's sitting down eating breakfast at a tennis court with Charlton Heston. Wow. And I just looked at it, and I looked at Hope when she got the phone. I said, Hope, what's with this picture right here? She goes, oh, well, he's a family friend. We were just having breakfast, and somebody snapped a photo one time. He's she's from the Hollywood area. She's got a Hollywood family. I said, well, to you, he's a friend of the family, but to me, you just had breakfast with Moses. Okay, so that's kind of how that works to me. Or he's the guy from Planet of the Apes. To make it more comic oriented, right? He's the guy that a lot of us see in a different way than you see him. And it's just that's that part
But
of it.
you even go to your entertainment people. You go to anybody, and because we're considered entertainment, and anybody that's a musician, a Hollywood star, comic book writer, and I'll use comics as an example. Look at Todd McFarlane. He's a product. He's a business owner. He's also a cool guy. You sit him down, and you don't think he doesn't present himself like a business owner, but I've seen his lives. I've seen everything he does. But that's business, and his business is selling himself. Most of the time you're selling your book, you might have a cool story, you might have cool art, you might got cool lettering, you might whatever it is that makes your stuff cool. That's awesome. 9 times out of 10, what I found is that people pick up the book because of you, because of what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't even really have to be the most likable guy. I can be a jerk sometimes, but there's something about your personality that attracts people, and they're like, hey, what do you got to sell? And I think we're in these unique situations now to where people can learn more about you at a distance, and they're safe. You go to a Comic-Con. I know from personal experience, I've worked not just with comics, but in music. But I did trade shows for a very long time with a lot of different industries, and trade shows are scary from both sides of that table. The person sitting behind the table is like, oh my God, someone's walking up to me. What do I say? Because you're always going to find that green person at that table that's never spoken to someone, and you're their first person, and they're shaking in their boots, making sure they say the right thing. And then on the opposite side, you're walking around these booths, and you're like, oh God, there's something I kind of want to check out, but what do I say?
Yes, this person I've watched on TV for 3 years. I will tell you right up, I geeked completely out when I met Stan Lee. I'm not gonna lie about it. I walked up, had my 2 kids with me, and it was 2010 New Orleans Comic Con. And that's the first time I also met Norman Reedus. And my youngest son, wanted to meet Norman, and that's when they were at the height of Walking Dead and the fame. So I said, look, Dad wants to meet Stan Lee. Once Dad does that, the rest of the weekend, y'all, we'll stay here all 3 days. We're right by the convention center, not a problem. Dad has to get his geek moment out of the way. They're like, that's cool. Walked up, met Stan, got him to sign a Spider-Man book, which I still have. And actually, when we moved, that was in the car with me. My Neil Adams signed personal book that I met and talked with him in Denver was with me. My Spider-Man Stan Lee signed books with me. Some of the Walking Dead stuff I got signed was with me personally. And that stayed with me in the car. That didn't get shipped in the 18-wheel. That stayed with me. But Norman was just such an impressive character to meet for my son. And when I say that, the experience, and you always have to remember this when you're meeting people, whether it's on a con stage and you're shaking hands with somebody, or if you're in an environment, sometimes that's their experience with you that sets the difference. Because with me, Norman's talking to my 10-year-old son as if they're best friends. And there is 5,000 people behind my son. My son wasn't rushed. He asked questions. Norman said, hey, little man. He said, what's your name? He said, mine's Norman. It's not that cool. He said, but what's yours, man? And he said, Mason. So he's signing, Mason's deal. I had asked my son when we got there. I said, do you want to, because we all know how expensive all this is. I said, do you want a print? Do you want to take your picture with him? Or do you want to get something signed by him? He thought about it for a second. You watch a 10-year-old's head sit there and he goes, I want a picture. I said, okay. We got the picture, and he's holding it like it's on a pillow as we're walking out. And I'm just watching that, and I'm looking at him. It's like, man, this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience at a young age like this. I said, hey, Mason. Mason and Logan were both with me. I said, hey, Mason. I said, you want to get that signed? He said, yeah, can we? So, of course, we get back in another line, and we bring that photo, and that's the photo that Norman signed. So not only did he have the photo with him, he had that photo with him signed. So that was such an experience. But I've met Norman, good God, 7, 8, 9 times at least since then. Met him with my wife. I've met him by myself. I've met him on different things. And he's literally, I don't think he knows me by name, but he makes me feel like he does, because he's literally stepped out of a line before and approached me in line and shook my hand out of the crowd. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's something he remembers. Maybe I have a common face, but for whatever reason, he always makes me feel like he's invested in what I have to say or my time. And that's the best thing you can do for a fan.
Yeah, that's that's something that I can't wait for, like the cons and things to come back, that personal experience. But that also goes on to your social media.
Yes.
You know, when someone comments on your stuff or you're commenting on theirs, don't just put like fire, fire, fire all the time. You know, if it's you and your buddy and you're just trying to make sure they get the comments and stuff, that's one thing. But you know, I always try, if I see someone that says something very genuine. There's one in particular. There's a you know, Noah. Talk about little kids. I have a, you know, as tough as I might present myself sometimes, I have a soft spot for little kids. And this little guy Noah does reviews. In fact, my wife and I were watching one he did today where he met Rob Liefeld yesterday, and this kid, this little kid, you know, 7 years old, did a video on crit, and to me, like he had his YouTube channel on it, he put it on his Facebook, his Instagram, and then what I did was I contacted his dad and I said, hey, I want to send you a hoodie, you know, because even as a fan, as a creator, like on the fan side, when you do something genuine, you don't expect something nice in return from the creator. It's nice that they acknowledge it. But, you know, that was one of the coolest things that had happened to me. And I wanted him to know that I appreciated that. And so even in other people too, you know, if I see anybody on my social media or even in public that says something about crit or has something nice to say about my product, I want to acknowledge that. Like Norman with you, he might not know your name. He's probably seen your face enough. I've met Norman once. He's actually a really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he's the type of person that can remember a face. He might see a million people, but you know, there's face people, there's name people, and there's numbers people. He might be a face person and recognize you and shake your hand, and that means the world. You know, I've met a few famous people multiple times, and there was a few in particular that would remember me. And you know, I was into music for so long, and I grew up. I'm not gonna throw a bunch of names out there, but my dad was very heavily into music. In fact, he had like backstage passes because he knew Twisted Sister and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was like I remember when I was 6 years old seeing Twisted Sister, you know, all access passes, and I'm like, who are all those women, Dad?
They had such great hair. You know?
Yeah. But my dad was also a truck driver who had this blonde flowing hair down to his ass. But when I met, you know, I got to Killswitch Engage. We actually got to tour with them. I was blessed with a few shows with them, but I got to go on their bus one time, and they just treated me like family. You know, and this was before we'd ever done anything like shared a stage or anything like that. But I was like, oh my God, these guys are amazing. And so I always take it from my personal view. If they take that time to say hello to me, make me feel important for 5 minutes, now they've got a fan for life. You know, we have to do that as creators as well, because now we're selling ourselves. It's our business. It's what's going to drive people to your next Kickstarter. It's what's going to keep your book alive post Kickstarter, because that one person, you know, that one person is what's going to spread to another 10.
Oh yeah, and like I said, that's basically, that becomes your job as the creator. Yep. to make sure that you're keeping that alive.
So
yeah, it definitely becomes, it has to be your passion. It has to be, and that passion has to come across to the 10-year-old, the 7-year-old, who, you know, all the way up to the adult that's collecting your book.
You have to look at it like when you're doing your Instagram live, when you're doing your Kickstarter, you're at work. It's a job. I mean, if you've ever run a crowdfunder, it's another job.
It is.
But I am going to try and wrap this one up. We're hitting right at an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm going to give you the floor for a minute to go ahead and talk about any projects that you've got going right now that you'd like to plug, where people can find you, and what your upcoming projects are. Sure.
A couple of things, and to end on what you did real quick, there's a couple people that the industry really lost. That's rough, and it's been a little while since we've lost them. But in meeting all these different people, you know, I really had to say when Scott Wilson left us, that was a big hole to me in feeling as a fan to meet a creator, because that was the weekend I met him with my wife. I met him the year before at Walker Stalker with my kids. Met him the next year with my wife. I didn't plan this well at all. We met him the weekend before we got married, so we ended up going to Atlanta, doing Walker Stalker for 3 days, getting down to New Orleans, getting married, and then flying back up to Tennessee for the honeymoon. So I didn't plan that worth anything. Planned everything else, but did not plan that trip very well. Anyway, meeting Scott Wilson was so moving to me because I didn't buy or do anything the second time. I mean, my kids and myself all bought from the first time. When I went back the second time, he talked to us for 30, 45 minutes at his table, just my wife and I, just asking us about our plans for the wedding and what we're doing. And that's the feeling I always want creators to be able to give back to everybody. Same thing with Michael Rorker. I asked him one time at a show what his favorite character was. He said that the character he's playing in Guardians of the Galaxy. So the next year when I went back and met him, I brought a figure from Guardians of the Galaxy, the Yondu figure. I'm a big Yondu fan. He signed that, was just blown away by it. Next one, in the next couple of shows, I'll finish unpacking hopefully. And instead of the Spider-Man poster you'll see the Flash Gordon poster that's up there. And the Flash Gordon poster was another Comic-Con meeting to where I specifically went to meet him. And we all know how he came back into fame with Ted, right? So I unfolded for him a 1980 Flash Gordon original movie poster. And I watched him light up as a fan and just in awe. Was like, wow. He said, I said, you don't see much of these? I'm sure you see tons of these every show. He's like, no, I don't. These aren't around anymore. So he signed it, and then he goes, hey, would you like my co-star to sign it? I said, she's here? They didn't even say she was here. And when the people cleared out, she was the booth right next to him. So he said, in pure Flash fashion, let me take that for you. Let me take care of that. And just took over and commanded the whole situation. Picked up my poster, walked around behind us, my wife and I, set it in front of her, had his co-star sign it. He folded it all nice and neat, put it back in the thing, as if it was a piece of gold, right? And to me, at that point, it was. And he said, well, let's take a bunch of pictures. Let's do some things. And we got pictures of me and him together, me and him with my wife, all of us together. I mean, he just said, we'll take what you want. And I was like, well, how much is this? And I said, look, you've bought stuff. You brought this cool poster. You've paid for some things already. Whatever you want to do, man, I'm up for. That's awesome. That's the experience, and those things, I bring that up because that's the experience I want every creator to bring, right? I want you to be able, and you've done well with that. I'm sure that kid's going to wear the heck out of that hoodie, because he got it off what he did. And be sure to make sure that you pass on to his dad the information for NSC Live TV, and I'll put a channel on for the kid. He'll have his own little review channel, and we'll simulcast that out for him, right? So we'll put it on YouTube for him. We'll put it out in some other places for him, and we'll get him some more followers to let him do his thing, right? I love doing.
He's like at 1,500 at 7 years old. He's like got a little fan base. It's so cool.
Yeah. So, and then where you can find us is, as you're throwing up on there, Inked Marketing. You don't have to put .com after it. I bought the .marketing, so you just go to ink.marketing. That brings up what we do. It brings up a gallery of some of the stuff we've done before, some of the stuff we're doing now. Most of those are connected to the actual Facebook and are the actual Kickstarter. So you can see how everything was laid out, how everything was done. If you have any questions about it, go to the Contacts Us page and make sure you ask for a solutions guide, okay? The solutions guide is a multi-page PDF booklet that we've put together on exactly a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight. How things need to be laid out, what you need to do, what services that we offer that can fill that gap or that void that you'd like taken care of, where you can get back to creating and you can get back to doing what you love to do, and we can do all the heavy lifting on making sure that the crowd shows up and buys the book. So again, Ink Marketing, come there. Come also check us out on nsclivetv.com, and come check us out on Camaraderie, camaraderie.com, and also bring you up. We have Camaraderie on the Facebook page. We have Camaraderie YouTube. We just did our 5th episode and fixing to hit the 6th episode. So we're just cranking out episode after episode, having a blast, and we're still screwing stuff up. We're messing stuff up on the board. We're trying to catch things. It's all live. None of it's scripted. It's just like get out and get it done. The phone rang on episode 4 because we were talking about how busy we've been, and then the phone rang for somebody else to look. So I mean, I was like, look, dude, I didn't even stage that. I was like, this, you can't plan this. That's just how busy we've become, and it's a real blessing that people like what we do, and they just keep telling their friends and their family and other people in the business. So that's I appreciate being on the show. Appreciate your time. Awesome job on the show with Australia. I know that's going to bring some stuff and help finish strong with your campaign. And we'll be looking forward to doing the Kickstarter for you.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and do mine real quick. since we're heading out. We got if everybody hasn't checked it out yet, patreon.com/indie comics dispatch. We are past the 10 Patreon mark, and so we're working on a D&D game. I'm waiting for Brett. So Brett, when you watch this, if you are watching this right now, just playing this game because I really want to DM and try to kill all you guys. I mean, give you guys a fun game. And where you can find me, other than indiecomicsdispatch.com, on Instagram, it's at Homebrewed Comics, which is on the screen right there. And on Facebook, it's Homebrewed Comics with an X instead of a CS. I also have homebrewedcomics.com, which we do have some books on for sale. But right now, if you go to this link right here, you can pick up issues 0 through 4. And on those, on the Indiegogo right now, we are we're 1,500. So we're 3 times funded. We just broke our third goal. And another 14 backers will be at the final stretch goal at 50. And you will get a total of 7 books for the price of 4. So check it out, ink.pub/critgogo. I've got tiers ranging from $6 to $60. So any price range, really, get in there and secure the 4 books. I want to go ahead and thank you, Kevin, for joining me tonight, and thanks everybody for hanging in. I think we were like 12, 13 people watching for a good majority of the time. So thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out for an hour and a half with us. Anything else?
Yeah, as you see that right there too is the ink.pub/critgogo. We also have the ability, as you notice, to smash down that 150 something character Kickstarter link that you put out there down to this link. And that's a good way to brand things, to put them out there on the screen like we're doing now, to put them out there in social media. The other one is just huge. And I appreciate that, Dennis. That's what we're here for. And we do this stuff for creators. We answer questions all the time. We also have a lot of fun and do stuff for kids as well. We're actually doing 2 fundraisers that I'm going to put out there before too long to the public that we're raising. We're dog people, right? So 2 of my friends had dogs that have gone through some really major catastrophes in the last week or so. And Paper Heroes Charity is a charity we put together back several years ago. And that is my hometown original comic shop is Paper Heroes. So in their name, I put together Paper Heroes Charity on the NSC side, and we raise money for different comic things, right? So these people are creators. There are other people in the comic and toy business. Everybody's got things going on with COVID. So we're doing a fundraiser right now for both of their dogs for all the different surgeries they've had to go through. I mean, of all the things, right, to have to pay for in COVID, now you're trying to save your dog, and it's costing you $5,000 or $10,000 to save your dog, right? So you'll see more about that from us later. And I'm looking forward to seeing the cat and everything hooked up in Voodoo Lounge when we get that off the ground. So that'll be a lot of fun. So a lot of stuff, good stuff coming from Chris, man. You guys pay attention. Don't let the day go by without seeing stuff from the creative mind of Chris right there, man.
Appreciate it. Well, I'm going to end the broadcast. Thank you guys for sticking with us, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
You guys take care.